So picture this. A massive 50% tariff wall is about to hit India from the United States, and it's threatening a huge part of its economy. Today, we're going to break down the problem, the clever but maybe flawed solution India has come up with, and the bigger global picture that might be its only real way out. All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with America's 50% tariff wall, then look at India's GST counterpunch. After that, we'll see how that cushions the GDP blow, but also why it's an imperfect shield. Then we'll explore finding new global buyers, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with the key takeaways. Okay, first things first, let's really wrap our heads around the challenge India is facing here. And believe me, this isn't some small trade spat. This is a potential economic shockwave, and it all kicks off with one very, very big number: 50%. That's the number at the very heart of this crisis. We're talking about a hefty 50% tariff that the United States is getting ready to slap on pretty much everything India sells to them. And that number, $87 billion, well, that tells you everything you need to know about the stakes. That's the value of goods India sold to the US just last year. Now, to put that into perspective for you, this one trading relationship makes up about 2.5% of India's entire economy. Losing even a chunk of that would be a massive hit, no question about it. So how in the world is India planning to respond to this? Well, their first line of defense is kind of surprising. It's not international. It's actually happening right at home. The plan revolves around a huge overhaul of its own tax system. You see, right now, India's main tax system, the Goods and Services Tax, or GST, is, well, it's a bit of a maze. You've got 4 different tax slabs, which, as you can imagine, creates a ton of confusion and paperwork for businesses. And this complexity leads to some pretty wild situations. I mean, just take popcorn, for example. You wouldn't think it's complicated, right? Wrong. Buying popcorn in India can mean paying 3 different tax rates. Unbranded kernels might be taxed at 5%, a branded bag at 12%, and if you buy it at the movies, you're hit with an 18% tax. It's the kind of thing that causes endless headaches. So the big idea here is to simplify things dramatically. Instead of those 4 confusing rates, the plan is to slash them down to just 2, 5% and 18%. The thinking is pretty simple. Make life easier for businesses, make things a little cheaper for you and me, and hopefully get people spending more money across the country. Okay, I know what you're probably thinking. Wait a second. How does cutting taxes at home help with a huge tariff problem from another country? It's a fair question, and it all comes down to some pretty simple economic math. See, here's the key things you have to understand about India's economy. It's not all about exports. In fact, the vast majority, over 60%, is powered by what's called domestic consumption. That's just regular people and businesses spending money right there in India. That is the engine the government is trying to fire up. And here's where the numbers get really interesting. Moody's analytics did the math, and they reckon the US tariffs could knock about 0.7% off India's GDP growth. But, and this is the clever part, they think these GST cuts could boost growth by 0.6% by getting people to spend more. It's almost a perfect match, right? It just about cancels out the damage. Well, on paper anyway. So, on the surface, it sounds like a perfect fix, doesn't it? A neat solution. But here's the catch. That big, top-level GDP number, it's hiding a much more painful story for real people and specific industries. You know, an analyst put it perfectly. They said it's like a bank compensating you for a stolen safety deposit box. But it's not the same as getting back your grandmother's necklace, no? And that really gets to the heart of it. You can fix the overall numbers, but you can't always fix the specific pain. Because let's be real. While the big economic numbers might look okay, entire industries are staring down a crisis. We're talking about sectors like textiles, gems and jewelry, and leather goods. These industries employ millions and millions of people. They're the ones on the front lines, directly in the path of that 50% tariff. I mean, think about it. If you buy a cheaper TV because of a GST cut, that's great. But it does absolutely nothing to help a small business owner who stitches leather bags to sell in America. They can't just eat a 50% tariff. They're at risk of getting completely wiped out by their competitors in places like Vietnam or Bangladesh. Okay, so if the domestic shield has some serious cracks in it, what's left? What's the other way out? Well, this brings us to the much bigger, more global part of the strategy. You have experts like Rajiv Kumar basically saying that India has spent way too much time and energy worrying about the US market. His advice? Treat the whole US situation as a sideshow, not the main show. In other words, it's time to focus on the rest of the world. And when you look at the numbers, this strategy starts to make a whole lot of sense. Sure, the US is a massive economy, but it only accounts for about 10% of the world's trade in goods. That means a whopping 90% of potential customers are somewhere else. And that's the big opportunity here. This crisis could actually be the catalyst, the push India needs to finally pivot to other huge markets. You've got the European Union and China, two absolute powerhouses just waiting in the wings. All right, so let's pull all of this together. We've talked about the problem, the domestic fix, its big flaws, and the global alternative. What's the big picture here? What should you really take away from all this? So here it is, in a nutshell. That 50% US tariff is the big, immediate problem. India's GST reform is a clever domestic shield to soften the blow to the overall economy. But that shield isn't perfect, and it leaves a lot of real people and businesses exposed. The true long-term fix isn't about playing defense. It's about going on offense and finding new customers all over the globe. And so, all of this leaves us with one final massive question. Yeah, this is a moment of real economic pain for India. But could this very shock be the catalyst it needs to become a more resilient, more diversified, and ultimately, a much stronger player on the world stage? Thanks for watching.